what is the end goal of all this? Like, to get rich, to make a living doing this, or?
Thank you for joining me today for the Indigenous Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today I have Akilah Martinez with me. From Glittering Girl World.
Yes.
And so to get started, if we could just have you introduce yourself, and then we'll get into just the conversation.
Yeah, so thank you for having me here at Rainforest Innovations with UNM. My name is Akilah Martinez. Tanajuni Nishne, Torajini Bashashin, Tkachini Dashache, Chisha Hatso Dashanale. And I'm from a community called Bahanlim, which translates to Bread Springs. Yeah, it's a community on the Navajo Nation.
I love that. So my fiance's Dene, and I'm trying to learn his clans, so that if we have children, they'll be in a Kai Dene because of me, but then I want them to be able to introduce their clan born for, right?
Yeah.
His maternal clan. So
yeah. So yeah, they'd be Nakai born for you, and then their grand folks, their first, like their grandparents, maternal grandparents would be Nakai too. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. So you are here as an entrepreneur, and your business is, your artist name is Glittering Girl World, which you've also turned into a business. So I'm wondering if you can kind of speak about how you came about just becoming an entrepreneur and starting your business.
Yeah, so Glittering World Girl is my artist name that I came up with, and that kind of like is a drawback to like Navajo creation story. Like right now, Dene people, they believe that we're living in Nahokanteswas, which means the glittering world. And it was foreseen in our creation stories and in prophecies that this would be a time of like, colonization and like materialistic kind of perspective, kind of like taking over more like spirituality and stuff like that. So because of that, it was foreseen that this would be a time where like we lose our languages and our cultures, and so it's like a very fragile time for us. But through the work that I do in language and cultural preservation, I embrace technology as well, and using modern media to revitalize our languages and cultures, I kind of like use it as like a contrast to that prophecy, to kind of say we can use these tools to kind of like further our language and culture. So that's kind of like the background of the whole Glittering World Girl concept. But yeah, like I'd say that, my lifelong goal to create community impact began when I was young, when I used to watch my grandparents watch television in English while they only spoke Dinebazad. So that was kind of like, I feel like my life purpose was evoked within me at a very young age, And so that kind of like translated into my art, where I do incorporate the Navajo language and culture. And then also, just as, art is one of the driving factors for continuing our culture and also stimulating our economies as Native people and Native communities. I just thought that, it's best to become like financially literate to combine financial literacy with art and technology, culture, and language to kind of create an ecosystem. So that's kind of like the background of my business there. Yeah.
So you told me in a previous conversation that you consider yourself an artist first and then an entrepreneur, correct?
Yeah.
So when did your journey, I guess, as an artist start, and then how did you gravitate towards entrepreneurship and be like, oh, maybe I can turn this into a business?
So I think that, growing up on the res, it's like there's, especially when you're in the rural res, you know, like you don't really have a lot of maybe sources of things to do, you know, like you don't have like a lot of like different entertainment that you would have in the city. So like I remember some of my very like early memories is like, you know, being a kid and creating whatever I could with what I had, you know, and I would be so fulfilled within that and thinking like I created the best thing, you know. So I think that stems from that, but then also like just observing the disadvantages that we have as Native people. Like you see modern media and then we're not represented in there. So growing up in that atmosphere, and then also growing up in a historically marginalized community, you know, like you know, like entrepreneurship is not taught there. There's not a lot of people talking about financial literacy. So I think that when I started at UNM, University of New Mexico, that's where I started kind of, I guess, nurturing my artistic sense more, because I declared my major as fine arts in studio art. So I got to dabble in a plethora of different mediums. And I think that's where I found a lot of joy was I would implement the Navajo language and culture into all of my artistic assignments there at UNM. And it was well received by my professors, so that was really cool. And then you know, and then that's where I grew a passion for electronic art and, you know, like implementing our language and culture into coding and stuff like that. And then also implementing the Navajo language and culture into video production, which was really cool. Like, so that's where I feel like I was able to really redefine what language and culture preservation could look like for Navajo specific. But also what I found was when I released those videos that I made at UNM, it was well received by other tribes as well, because they could relate to what I was trying to do. And like, the imagery that I put out there was very, I guess, futuristic and redefining for people.
Because there's not just a need in the Navajo culture, it's like all tribes are trying to preserve their language, their traditions, all of that. So, and I think it's really awesome how you're kind of coupling tradition and language and culture with technology, because a lot of times I feel like people maybe feel like they can't work together, but you're kind of showing that they can work together.
Yeah, like I think that's the direction that we're going in, you know. I mean, to draw further more on your initial question, so where I actually started to take the entrepreneurial course, the entrepreneurial route with being an artist was, you know, realizing that this is my passion and I want to make a living off of this. And realizing that, like I said earlier, art is one of the driving forces of what keeps Native cultures alive, and also with what keeps our economies healthy on Native American communities. So realizing that, like I was taking care of my grandma right after I graduated UNM from 2014 to 2018. And when she passed away, I realized that, you know, if I really wanted to make an impact for my community and make an impact, of course, for myself first, and, you know, reset, I guess, paradigms within my family, paradigms within my community, that I would have to become financially literate in a way that's non-predatory, because I feel like as people of color, we're historically subjected to predatory business practices that, you know, the bank might generalize you as, or something like that. So thankfully, after making that realization, I received a fellowship from a Black women-owned XR technology company called Crux, and they enabled me to travel between LA and New York to learn from like specialists in POC social entrepreneurship leading business people, as well as creative artists who were working within the XR technology field. So that was a huge blessing, and that's where I felt like I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and business terminology and what to look out for when you're like, maybe asking for investments or going into a bank or something like that, or to just make those connections of people who are like-minded, who are willing to move POC communities forward. So that's kind of like where it all started. It was like about 2018 when I kind of got into entrepreneurship. Yeah.
So the Black women-owned, what was the program called?
They're an XR company called Crux.
Okay, Crux.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of your first, I guess, dabble in entrepreneurship, and maybe what opened up that path for you, would you say? And then from there, I know you've participated with like AIBE and New Mexico Community Capital. So what has that looked like since you kind of started off with Crux and then going forward?
So I feel like with Crux, like that gave me a lot of confidence to get into these spaces, to network with people like other entrepreneurs or like really seasoned professionals, like I think that that's where that was first, and that was probably one of the most important things, right, is that we need confidence to believe in ourselves, right, to move forward with our dreams, to bring something into reality that doesn't exist yet, So I'd say that, so through Crux, after that, I just started getting myself into like all kinds of networking events with young professionals of Albuquerque.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, with them, and then also with Google, they had hosted a couple events that I attended, and so that was really cool. And like I would just kind of like walk up to people and talk to them, learn what they're about, and then also tell them what I'm trying to do, and they were all really supportive, so that was really cool. And then so aside from that, I think that what I was doing as well on the side was, as an artist, I was writing a lot of grants, all in the back of what we're talking about right now. Behind the scenes, I was doing a lot of grant writing, and then I wanted to also expand on my development as a person and grow more and expand my knowledge in entrepreneurship, and to kind of learn about all of the different types of models out there, so then I could make an informed decision on what kind of business to start. So then that's when I started like reaching out to AIBE and then New Mexico Community Capital. I learned about their business marketing essentials and their financial basics courses. So it seemed like those were really valuable and had something for me to learn from. Yeah.
You mentioned something, and I think it's very insightful, about your business model, how you're incorporated. So a lot of times people are just like, just go get your LLC, but you didn't want to do that right away because you just wanted to learn more. So can you kind of speak about that and why you decided to pursue a sole proprietorship first?
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like when I first got involved with Crux, what I thought was really cool about them was that they were very thoughtful about the way they moved forward. Crux is a cooperative, so they for them they prioritize ownership. Having ownership is important, and as artists it's important to have ownership of your work, right? Especially with them, like in the XR technology field, some of these creatives that we worked with, they were the first in building the virtual computer, that's like coming up in the world here.
Yeah.
It's going to be introduced soon. So they were like the first in creating some of these technologies, so they had to find business models that would make sure that they're not taken advantage of, and that they can claim ownership of what they create. So I think through that, like it made me become a critical thinker, as to how I want to approach what I want to do, especially if I'm wanting to create something that is going to benefit not only me and my family, but my community at scale. So I feel like a lot of the times when you get thrown into entrepreneurial spaces, there's a pressure there that where people are told, like, okay, you have this great idea, go register for an LLC today. It's only like, you know, less than $50 or something, and you can just sign up right here, right now, today, you know. And I feel like maybe that does work for people. Maybe there are a lot of success stories like that for people, you know. I don't want to put limitations out there. that could work for people. But like for me personally, I felt really uncomfortable doing that because there's a lot about business that I didn't understand at those points in time, to where right now I feel more confident to doing something like moving forward with like filing as an LLC. Like for one of them, I know there's a conception out there that the financial part is the most intimidating part for people to deal with when they become a business. I feel like right now, in my sole proprietorship, I do practice healthy financial, you know, I guess healthy financial practices, yeah, like to where I'm able to report my expenses and everything like that to my CPA every year. And so that I feel like is really helpful for me because it's not such an intimidating thing to me anymore. So for me, I feel like it's better for me to learn about these things first before I jump into it, kind of like, you know, being thrown in there and being like, go figure it out, you know, like, and then having to be in trouble later on. So I feel like that's the truth too, not only for financials, but also for my logo, my business logo and my name. So I've heard that sometimes some people, they'll go along with like a business name, and then they'll get like a cease and desist letter for using that name later on, you know, and while they've already established their whole brand off of that. So just getting the help along the way to get those things secured is what I find is really helpful and less stressful for me.
I think that's very insightful because I think as like resource providers, sometimes we're like, just apply for your LLC, get your EIN number, but I think it's important for like people in my position and then other resource providers to know, you know, sometimes, especially when you're working with like Native populations who maybe aren't as, and not even just Native populations, just in general, people aren't aware or educated about like tax structures, financial literacy, like what is an LLC, what is a sole proprietor, so kind of just like meeting people where they're at, I guess you could say. I just think it's really awesome that, you know, you made that choice for yourself, like, no, I'm gonna be a sole proprietor and then I'm gonna figure out what's best for me after I'm educated on this topic.
Yeah, I feel like that's it's very important that the conversation is very lengthy for that, you know, like I still don't know if an LLC is the best for what I want to do. I know that to be like an S corp or a different type of corp, you have to first make a certain amount of money before you can apply for those. But those things might be the best for what I'm trying to do, you know?
Eventually.
Yeah, so, and then also the whole conversation of for-profit and nonprofit. Some could argue that a nonprofit is really good for Native communities, but some would argue that it's not, you know? So I think that's the whole conversation that I'm dwelling in, as well as like reframing what abundance is and reframing what money is, and also I guess reprogramming what money is as well. Like I know we come from you know, a history of colonization and all that, but we have to remember that like back then there were forms of trade as well, and today the modern day trade is money. Like even within our cultural healing practices, a lot of the times when you hire a medicine man, you pay him money, you know?
Yeah.
You can pay him, other goods as well, but most of the time money is part of that. So I think it's that whole conversation of like decolonizing money and what can you do with money to create good, you know?
Yeah, that's a huge conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a different mindset surrounding it as well. You know, when I speak with a lot of Native American entrepreneurs, business is viewed through a different lens, and I think it's a healthier lens in some sense, compared to like traditional capitalism, you know, with that like westernized mindset. So I think it's definitely an important conversation to continue to have, you know, like what is the Indigenous entrepreneurship gonna look like, you know? And I guess that kind of leads to another question that I have is, what do you see entrepreneurship as, like, for your community, for yourself and your community? Like, where do you see it benefiting you in your community, or like what direction do you think it could take you?
So I think about a lot of this as I'm, imagining and, fantasizing about the perfect business model to create, I think that a lot of it ties back to our traditional knowledge and our traditional practices, which I'm really fascinated with. I think it allows us to take a spiritual approach to entrepreneurship and wealth in general.
Wow.
So that's what I've been really defining within the past couple of years within myself, and also, with this type of people I like to surround myself with, is to have that ability to imagine something new,
Innovate.
Innovate. Exactly. Yeah. So, I think that for me, it's like because I grew up in a traditional household. I think that it's like with our cultural teachings and our cultural songs, prayers, and ceremonies, there is a lot of language and a lot of perpetuation of success and of wealth, and also abundance of material wealth as well. And I feel like with industrialization, like Western industrialization, a lot of that got tainted along the way. What we think when we think about materialism has gotten tainted along the way because of colonization, industrialization. But when you look at the core values of Navajo, in our ceremonies, our culture, and our language, there are words for material wealth, and those are delivered in a sacred way and in an abundant way and for a mutually beneficial way for me, for you, for everyone, the earth, everything, So when I think about that and like indigenizing entrepreneurship, I like to keep that in mind. I like to keep those songs and those words in mind, and to think about how can we approach this from a holistic manner, So that's why it takes time for me to just I just can't go and commit to something that I'm not really to something that I don't have an educational approach to. I'm not educated on it enough to just go and do something like that.
You have to make sure it aligns with your values.
I think that's a good way to put it. For sure.
What you just spoke to reminds me of what you mentioned in a previous conversation about Kalika. She said that you're in it seems as if we're in a, what did she say, native renaissance or something like that?
Kalika, she works at New Mexico Community Capital now. But I can't remember where or when it was that she said this, but it might have been through one of the programming that I took, the BME or the financial basics. But she did word that right now where it seems like we're in a native or indigenous renaissance of we're creating something totally new with with what we do. Either you're an artist or you make food, or you're a lawyer, native lawyer, or whatever you do, whatever you create, it's like we're creating something new for our communities right now. And I think that's really cool to, imagine that we're all part of. Yeah.
I agree. I think it's exciting, you know, and I think there's a lot of hope there too for the future. As you've gone about like navigating the entrepreneurship realm, what are some challenges that you've come across?
So, man, I would say that, and I feel like because I helped facilitate one of the workshops last week with the Futures Indigenous Women, and I feel like this is kind of a challenge that we might all come across as entrepreneurs. Not even just if you're an Indigenous, but any entrepreneur is, meeting that resistance from your family sometimes, or your loved ones who may not really understand what you're trying to do. That could be very challenging, and that's where you kind of have to fall back on your self-belief and your self-confidence, and to believe that, that you do have something valuable to offer the world, and that things are shifting towards those new realities. Even we were saying earlier, in workspaces, like work culture is changing as well. So I feel like that could be one challenge. Luckily, I do have family members too that do believe in me, and and they're like, don't give up, keep going. But I feel like that can be very challenging.
What does your like day-to-day look like now, as you're working on projects, growing your business, trying to figure out what direction you're going to go next? Kind of what does that look like, and how do you keep a balance?
So I would say that, my day-to-day, well, usually I really like to take care of myself. I feel like sometimes in entrepreneurial courses, there's a very small conversation to where, self-care and how important that is, because I know as entrepreneurs, you can dedicate, your whole hours a day to just moving your idea forward, But for me, I do implement a lot of self-care, and also, I guess just reprogramming what I believe is, true abundance and true success, and reaffirming those for myself. I think that that's a very important part, because
what does that look like to you? I think like true abundance, true success.
I think that that's subjective for everyone. For me, I feel like right now it's able to take care of myself, because not just externally but internally, and I feel like being able to have compassion for people around me, and my family, and then also my community and the larger globe, but also being able to do what I love, without struggling to do that, that's like success to me. And also being able just to being able to effortlessly gravitate towards what I love doing in the life, in the world, so for me, I feel like that's a huge part of my day. For me, like before, when I was not really on track with my inner peace and my inner well-being, and taking care of myself and valuing myself and everything I have to offer, when I wasn't doing that to the magnitude that I'm doing it now, or that I've been doing it for like the past year and a half, I wasn't reaching as much external success as I was, back like then, because that wasn't a practice for me. So I feel like once I started becoming aware and conscious of that inner power, and recognizing that inner power in others, I feel like that's where a lot of it started coming in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it kind of plays back to that abundance mindset that you talked about previously.
It's really exciting, and I'm willing to conversate with people about those topics, Because I believe it's an important part, you know, like if you don't believe in yourself, then who's going to believe in you? You can't count on people to believe in you around, and that could tie back to, you know, if you have family and friends that don't really align with your vision or they don't see your vision, you can't count on them to believe in you. You have to believe in yourself, you know?
Yeah. So I'm curious to learn just a little bit more about the work that you do and the art and the projects that you're working on, because I think you're working in a very unique space. XR technology is already kind of very new to me. Like, I'm like, what is that? And then to add the layer of like language preservation and culture preservation, like, what are you doing and what do your projects look like?
Yeah, so XR technology is an umbrella term for virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. And then I work in those realms, mainly augmented reality, and I do have experience in creating virtual reality, but I like augmented reality because you don't need a headset. With virtual reality, you need a headset, like an Oculus. I like augmented reality because all you need is a smartphone. And a lot of people on the res, they already have smartphones or tablets. So that, I want to think about accessibility, you know? So I like working in augmented reality. That's what I've been mainly developing my projects in. And then I also work in video production. So, and then I couple those both mediums with language and cultural preservation. So my latest project that is completed and is going to be in at least 3 schools here in New Mexico. It's called DigiNewMex. Yeah, and it's a grant-funded project. And it's a project, a virtual environment that shows 3D models of indigenous foods to the Southwest. It's been a whole learning experience because it's a lot of it self-taught. And that could be a challenge. One of those challenges is that no one here in New Mexico really teaches these mediums. So it's like I have to be on the computer and doing a lot of self-taught, and then also finding courses that are offered from out of state to attend virtually to learn how to build these environments. And then, so DigiNewMex is really exciting because it incorporates 7 indigenous languages you can find in New Mexico, including Spanish as well, plus Spanish, so 8 languages. And it's going to be available on Play Store and also the App Store for iOS.
Cool.
Yeah.
So is it only accessible to those schools, or can other people access it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about releasing it to the schools first, and then releasing it to the broader public after that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So then that's like IP that you own, or like it's your app, your property, correct?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, I feel like you're just getting started.
Yeah, I really am, and it's taken a lot of groundwork, you know, like refining grant writing. A lot of my projects, I am grant funded right now, so that could be part of my my daily life that you were talking about earlier. My daily life also like encompasses just a lot of self-growth activities. I talked about the inner growth and taking care of that, and self-care and self-love, which is very important. But also what can I be involved with that's going to allow me to grow is basically like my whole life, and it's really fun. Like I find joy in learning about financial structures, or find joy learning talking to other entrepreneurs, attending webinars, looking out for just other resources, refining my different CVs, my different resumes that I have for different outlets, you know, just all of that. I find joy in that and flow in that. It's not really like a daunting task for me. So that's part of my daily activity, or listening to a podcast that's like like a podcast like this, you know, listening to a podcast where I can like surround myself with like-minded individuals and ideas. So that's also a part of my daily life. Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited for you. I think, like you said, you've really laid some good groundwork, and I can just really see your business going all different kinds of directions in the future. But I guess on that note, what is your hope, like, or some goals that you have for your business? Like, what do you want it to turn into?
Yeah, so well, my near business goal is to get the app DigiNewMex into the schools successfully, and then from there creating like a nice marketing strategy for it, and then incorporating my brand. And I've been editing and working on a website for Glittering World Girl. So that's kind of like a near, you know, close business goal that I have to accomplish. But then also, I think also working with other schools on the Navajo Nation, immersion schools. Yeah, so I've interviewed about 20 different people from immersion schools on and off the reservation. And just building those relationships more with them. So, like I've been invited to come out to the Little Singer Immersion School in Arizona, just to visit their campus and to see what they're doing with the kids. Just, you know, building those relationships and nurturing those relationships.
Yeah.
So then that way, you know, when I have more projects come up, it'll be easier to work with them to get these projects into the schools with kids and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then long-term goal, what would you say?
Okay, yeah, so that one's kind of like a long-term-ish, like getting it more into the schools on the Navajo Nation.
Yeah, like that's just an ongoing goal.
Yeah. So long-term goal, I would say, you know, I'm producing videos in Denebazad, and those are going out to the community, and I'm creating augmented reality applications that the Navajo community is just like able to use as a resource of entertainment and educational tool. So that's kind of like, you know, what I want to fund my business. But then also I have a passion for public speaking, so I want to get better at that. Yeah, so that's kind of like something I feel like I'm growing a passion for. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to be on your podcast. And I would, that's what I would say is just like, that's kind of what I see for it right now. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see how your business grows, because I do see a lot of potential and a lot of really good things coming from it. I'm even thinking just like about my own situation. Like if you had an app, I would buy it for my future kids, just so that they can learn their
exciting.
Because I'm New Mexican, and Alex is Navajo, and so he knows the language, but not conversationally, and I try, but it's a hard language. So I would love to have a tool, you know, for our kids to be able to use and just
so
like keep that, because that's a part of who they are, like Spanish and then Dene. So I just see a lot of other people in my situation wanting an app or a tool that I would pay money for it, you know. So keep me in the loop as that develops.
For sure. There's so much excitement around it, you know, like one of, I guess, a long-term goal too is something that I hope to even start doing next year, is intergenerational digital storytelling through
that
these
would
mediums.
Be awesome.
Yeah, because like I said, I took care of my grandma, and I was very much attached to her hip as a little girl, you know, and she's probably one of the main reasons why I'm so fluent in Dinabazad. But I think a lot of people like me, they're close to their elders, but then they don't document a lot of the stuff, and then there's a lot of like regret and shame around that whole conversation, you know. So I think intergenerational digital storytelling is going to be a huge component. And then also making sure that I pay the elders or whoever, you know, children, elders, whoever collaborates with me or has an input to my work. I want to create that model to where they're getting paid a good amount, you know? Awesome.
That kind of leads me to probably one of the last topics we'll touch on, but as far as your business model, I know we've talked about this. One of the challenges you've had is finding like the right type of business model for running a business on the reservation. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that, because I know it's been a challenge for you and you have like a lot of questions, and I think this is a huge conversation that we've been having with our liaisons, and there's some models out there, but I really don't think there's like the ideal one yet. So I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's been a challenge for me to kind of really define. So I do a little research of the different structures. Like we're kind of touched on earlier, there's like, of course, a difference between the LLC and the different types of corporations, and then also the nonprofits. So I feel like it's been a little challenge for me because, like I said, I really consider like a lot of cultural and traditional knowledge when I move forward. And I feel like there's a lot of advanced mind frames when you like our people, the way they used to think was very futuristic, you know? So
it's very wise.
It is, yeah. So I like thinking about that as I move forward, and I feel like there's that conversation of like, you know, what may work for other people in different parts of the country might not work for us. And then also like what types of systems that have shown record of creating success and abundance for families and communities, those types of systems are not really commonly taught to people in the masses. So like linking up with the right people to learn from is important. So just today, like I reached out to people on my app from Crux, and I asked them questions, you know, can you guys link me up with someone who knows about this and that, you know? So I think it's just like learning about what's the best way to reclaim our abundance and all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing conversation, I think, and something that a lot of people working in this space, like the entrepreneurs, the resource providers, just need to continue to have to figure out, okay, how can we create a system and a model that serves entrepreneurs both on and off the reservation, because it's a little challenging right now.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, like, I think it's exciting, you know, like, I know that there's so many possibilities out there. A lot of what we're surrounded by is just a small fraction of what's possible, you know? So I feel like, you know, tapping into the infinite possibility of, you know, creating something for yourself and for your community is what's exciting, and knowing that exists is the part that, you know, motivates me.
I think that's that abundance mindset again. And then also just that open-mindedness of, well, this is how things have always been done in the past, but that doesn't mean that it has to be what we do now or going forward. And I think that's, again, that whole Renaissance idea is just, we're, I think, in a period of really creating something new. And
Yeah.
I think it is exciting.
It is.
And you, and then a lot of the other entrepreneurs I've spoken with, you guys are the trailblazers right now.
Oh.
So we really, I think, at least here at UNM Rainforest Innovations, look to you all as like guiding lights, as this is what needs to happen, this is where things aren't working, this is where things are working, and this is what needs to happen for our vision going forward. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say thank you, to this space that you've offered me to share some insight. It's really cool. Like, I've got to say that there are places like you guys, and then also like New Mexico Community Capital, AIBE, that really, you make space for us to do what we want, and because we have good intentions for our community. But then I also want to say that there are plenty of other resources out there that are willing to back you up, like the grants that I have, the Fulcrum Fund, the Andy Warhol Foundation, Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, are so many others. There's a couple more in the works right now that they're willing to just give you money to, fund your idea. And that is like, I think that's that change that we're talking about. Organizations, they're wanting to be a part of that change. And like with Crux, I learned a lot of like new terminology, like impact funding, enlightened funding. There's like organizations that are out there who are wanting to be part of something new and to help create liberation for people. And so that's one thing that I feel like is helping this whole ecosystem move forward.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, and I'll look up links for all those that you mentioned, and I'll put them in the comments. But one last question. If someone's listening or watching right now who's like thinking about starting a business, or they've just started, what's a piece of advice that you have for them?
So I would say just, believe in yourself and believe in what you have to do. You have so much value to offer the world. And I would say, I guess just have that faith and belief that what you want to do is possible. And once you start doing that, things will just start coming to you, like things will back your ideas up. And don't ever take like criticism or negative talk to the heart. And it's just like, you just gotta believe in yourself, and you'll be fine.
Abundance mindset, that's what I took away from this.
Sweet. Nice. Yeah.
And then one last thing, if people listening or watching want to find you, I know you're still working on your website, but where can they connect?
Yeah, so I'm at Glittering World Girl on all platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Facebook, Instagram,
and TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll link all of those in the description as
okay.
well. So
Sweet.
Thank you